Hello and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind podcast. The boys have abandoned me this week, so I'm riding solo. Lucky for you lot. We've got 2 weeks of pre-season in the books, and I'm going to go and look at some takeaways. Let's get to it.
I just want to rewind to when we were young at heart. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
So as I said, all alone, get my little fiddle out. The boys have abandoned me. They're off doing their own things this week. So I'm going to bring you some takeaways from the first 2 weeks of pre-season, things for us to kind of keep an eye on, stock up, stock down. I've got 3 players for you that stock up, 3 players stock down, and two players to keep an eye on moving forward. Before I get started, I just want to acknowledge a few guys that are doing some great work this pre-season, giving us loads of info on what's been going on, snap counts, all things like that. That's Nathan Yankee at PFF, Dwayne McFarland at Fantasy Life, and Hayden Winks at Underdog. I've used some of their data here to help me put together some of the things and amalgamate some of my thoughts on some of the players after the first 2 weeks. So let's take a look at our stock up players. The first guy I want to talk about is Keon Coleman, the rookie wide receiver on the Bills. To be honest, I've been pretty nervous about Keon Coleman the whole of this draft season so far. I just wasn't totally convinced that he could handle a big workload on this offense. I just wasn't sure he was totally ready, and I didn't know if he could become the wide receiver that the Bills really want him to be in 2024. Now, while I still don't really know that he is going to be everything that they want him to be, the good news is that he played 100% of the snaps with the starters over the first 2 weeks of preseason. So it seems to me that the Bills' plan is to have him on the field a lot this season. So I do think any guy that's going to be on the field all the time with Josh Allen, I want to draft. So at this point, I am now more than happy to draft Keon Coleman at his current ADP. When we opened the draft season all the way back in April, he was actually the first Bills wide receiver to go off the board. More and more now, he's the second or even the third Bills guy to go off the board. The others seem to kind of have pushed in front of him. Now, we may find now that preseason kind of is started and we're seeing that Keon Coleman's getting a lot of work. That might flip, particularly now that we know that Curtis Samuel, unfortunately, is suffering from turf toe at the moment, so he might be out for the start of the season. So I do think Keon Coleman's going to start creeping up in drafts now, but I would be very willing to draft him because he's a rookie wide receiver. We know that they can often come along towards the second half of the season, which is when we want those points. And also he's going to be on a high-powered offense with Josh Allen. So count me in. I'm happily buying stocks of him now. The second guy I want to talk about, Taysom Hill, the tight end of the New Orleans Saints. I mean, I was just thinking to myself, surely he's not still hanging around, right? But wrong, here he is again. Hill always seems to manage to do it and get targets and, throw touchdowns in this offense. He's been really active with the starters this preseason. He's been playing snaps all over the field. He's been playing at tight end, he's playing at halfback, fullback, and also slot wide receiver. Obviously, this season and this off-season, they got a new offensive coordinator. So there were kind of questions as to how much was Hill going to get used with this new offensive coordinator. Looks like, based on the preseason, they're going to keep him a major part of this offense in 2024. Over the past 2 seasons, he's finished as the tight end 12 and then the tight end 9. So, we already know what he can do. And if he's getting even more work, I think he is a really great late round option at the tight end position. Obviously, you've just got to make sure in your leagues on the platform that you play in, he is tight end eligible because he is going to be a great little steal in that tight end position. But as I say, just double check that. The third guy I want to talk to you about and that I think is wheels up, all, full steam ahead, Xavier Worthy, the rookie wide receiver from Kansas City. He's been heavily involved with the starters over both preseason games, so we know that Andy Reid likes to play his starters. Mahomes has played in both games so far. Obviously not the whole games, but to start them off. There's always been concerns about Andy Reid and his confidence in using rookies because we know that his scheme can be quite complex. Of course, Rashid Rice came along towards the second half of the season, and we now know he's a big part of the offense. But it looks to me like Worthy's probably going to get playing time very early on, straight out of the gate. In the past 2 preseason games, he's had an 89% route participation and a 25% target share from Patrick Mahomes. So clearly, he's heavily involved already. Now, obviously, Hollywood Brown is out at the minute with an injury, so these numbers will probably drop some when he returns to the lineup. But I feel confident that Worthy is still going to be quite a big piece and part of this offense going forward and into the actual season. This is another rookie that I was quite nervous of drafting him at his current ADP. You know, we know all of those Kansas City guys have been going in kind of the early, late-ish, single-digit rounds. They've all kind of been clumped together. And Worthy, I did feel a little bit nervous, as I say, that he wasn't going to kind of do much over this season. But wheels up, full steam ahead, like I said at the beginning. Sounds like he's going to be heavily involved. I think Andy Reid's really enjoying scheming things up for him. And I think he's going to be a great add in your drafts this off-season. Let's have a look at a few players that I kind of feel a little bit stocked down. I'm a little bit more reluctant to draft them at the moment. Kind of want to see how things play out a little bit more. The first one is Jermaine Burton, the rookie wide receiver from the Bengals. Obviously, as a Bengals fan, I loved this pick in the 3rd round, and I really thought that he was going to be somebody who was going to contribute straight away. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite worked like that. In the first preseason game, Burton didn't get on the field until the end of the 2nd quarter, and this was after 6 other wide receivers. He didn't play a single snap when Joe Burrow was on the field. And as I say, he was later on coming in the game. Now, despite this, we did see his flashes. He had 3 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown. And so we did see then in the training camp this week, he has had the odd snap with Joe Burrow, but he's still not kind of involved that much with the first team offense. He did get to start with the second team offense, obviously this preseason game at this weekend, but we also saw him on there fielding punts and also kick returns. So to me, that sounds like they're trying to find ways to get him involved in the game. And I'm not totally convinced that he's going to start on this offense, particularly right away. The thing that I do know about Joe Burrow is that he's a massive guy that has to have trust with his wide receivers. And if he doesn't trust a wide receiver, he will not throw them the ball. So when he was asked about Jermaine Burton last week, and obviously the great game that he had, he just basically said he needs to continue to learn the playbook and keep grinding. So not exactly a glowing review like we saw with his rookie tackle, Amarius Mims, where he was full on glowing, saying he was a starter, looking great. So I'm not convinced that Burrow totally trusts Burton at this stage. Obviously, we know it can take time for rookie wide receivers to come along in the NFL. And we may see Burrow change his tune later in the season as Burton gets more settled in the offense. I really wouldn't be surprised, though, if Burton saw very little action in this offense this season. After drafting, I've drafted loads of Burton because I thought he's going to be a fantastic wide receiver 3 on this offense. I'm actually backing off a little bit because I am nervous that Burrow doesn't trust him and he's not going to see much time this year. I'm not saying that's going to carry on into next season, but I do feel a little bit nervous for this season. Obviously, we've seen that Andrei Yoshavash seems to be the guy that's looking at those slot snaps. I think they are going to have a bit of a rotation, but I do think Yoshavash does have a bit of an upside compared to some of the others like Trenton Irwin. So for me personally, I'm backing off Burton at this point, and I'm looking towards Andrei Yoshavash as my choice for wide receiver 3 and potentially some fantasy spike weeks. Another rookie wide receiver that I feel a little bit stocked down and nervous about is Troy Franklin on the Denver Broncos. Franklin hasn't seen a single snap with the starting group so far this preseason. In fact, the primary wide receivers that we've seen go out have been Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Josh Reynolds. So they seem to be at the minute, the locked-in 3 wide receivers with the starting group. There's actually 3 other wide receivers, obviously not including Franklin, that were rotating in on occasion in this game with the starters. But Franklin, unfortunately, just could not get onto the field with them. Then even playing with the backups, he hasn't had a single reception over the past 2 weeks. I'm feeling really quite nervous that Franklin is not going to see any time on this offense this season. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver. I think it was 72. For me at this stage, he's a heavy fade now. We've got more information. He's not in the wide receiver rotation in Denver. I think we need to back off. I would not be drafting Franklin at all. If I was really looking for a dart throw, Mims might be an option. But again, he's really only rotating very small amounts in with the starting offense, and I don't feel wholly confident in him either. But I think there's a chance that Franklin has a redshirt year and is sits this whole year. I personally would not be drafting him. Even in the later ends of my drafts, I'd be looking elsewhere. Another guy that's stocked down and I'm actually really not wanting to draft anymore is Cole Kmet, the tight end of the Chicago Bears. Kmet's played behind Gerald Everett in both of the preseason games. So with the starters, Kmet's posted a 39% route participation versus Everett's 61%. Now we know that Shane Waldron, who is the new offensive coordinator, is known to use these heavy tight end rotations. We've seen that with Noah Fant, and certain others within that Seattle offense. Very frustrating, and it limits any fantasy value for any of these tight ends. Kmet is currently being taken as a tight end 16 in fantasy drafts. I just can't get there. He's going to be in a rotation. I think he's going to have extremely limited fantasy value. For me personally, is a hard fade moving forward. He's a do not draft. So I have a few players for us to keep an eye on in preseason week 3. These are mainly for deep drafts, some best ball leagues, or as I say, these very deep rosters and benches, guys that you might want to nip on the end that may have some spike weeks or potential upside if they manage to get in with the starters. So the first guy is Carson Steele. He's an undrafted rookie running back, and he's with the Kansas City Chiefs. So in this second preseason game, Steele actually replaced Isaiah Pacheco on the second drive of the game while the starters were still on the field. They pulled Pacheco, they arrested him for the rest of the night, and Steele went in. Now, so far, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been the running back 2 in this offense, and he was out with an illness this week. So I don't think we can make any assumptions that Steele is the running back 2. However, it does appear that he has surpassed an Eric Prince on the depth chart as the current running back 3. Now, depending on what goes on with CEH, whether his illness lingers or he struggles, there's a chance that Steele could possibly move ahead of CEH into that running back 2 role. So I want to see what goes on next week. I want to see if CEH is back, and I want to see when Steele gets into the game. But he's a guy to keep an eye out for these extremely deep leagues where you can pop a little dart throw on the end of your bench. The next guy to keep an eye out for next week is Brendan Rice, the rookie wide receiver of the LA Chargers. Rice started this second preseason game as the outside wide receiver opposite Josh Palmer. He had a 71% route participation with the starters, and then he played only one more drive after they went off before they rested him as well. Now, obviously, there's a number of guys that they have been rotating in and out, but I think Rice is starting to kind of make a case to potentially be that third starting wide receiver. Now, we know that the Chargers potentially are going to be quite run heavy, and at the moment, Justin Herbert is out with injury. So there may not be much upside to start the season. However, once Herbert is back, and if this offense is highly efficient, there is a chance we get the odd spike week from Brendan Rice if he can become a starting wide receiver. So keep an eye out on that. And again, a guy potentially to put at the kind of final rounds of your best ball drafts, or potentially in these extremely deep bench leagues. Last guy to keep a little bit of an eye out, because we've heard lots of murmurings recently over the past few weeks, and that's Jordan Whittington, the rookie wide receiver on the Los Angeles Rams. He was actually their 6th round draft pick this year. Now, we know that the Rams will always rest their starters in the preseason. So, all of the big boys have been out, but Whittington has been a standout with the backups over the past 2 weeks. Now, because he hasn't sat, we know he hasn't made his way into the starting lineup. So last year, Puka, he played in preseason game 1 and then sat out for the rest. So that gave us an idea that Puka was probably going to be a starter. He's not quite made that yet. And as I say, they do have Demarcus Robinson that they really like as wide receiver 3. So he may not get any meaningful snaps as a starter yet. However, he is a guy worth keeping half an eye out, and it's worth looking to see, is he or is he not playing in the 3rd preseason game? If he doesn't play, that could be promising that they're considering giving him some role as a starter. So it's been a short one tonight because it's me on my own, but hopefully I've given you a few short hints and tips, or things that I've seen and liked or disliked that might help you with your drafts moving forward. So thank you all very much. And this brings me to the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on X at Wildcard Rewind. Head over to our YouTube channel and search for us at Fantasy Wildcard. Don't forget to subscribe to us there. Hopefully the boys will be back next week. We'll have a bit more chat, bit more banter. It's a bit difficult to banter with yourself, to be honest. But hopefully, as I say, I've given you a few kind of things to help you out for your drafts moving forward, and things to watch out for moving into week 3 of the preseason. In-season football is almost here. Can't wait. And hopefully I'll catch up with the boys next week. See you then.